Hello, I'm Michael Pierce, Director of the Alabama Center for the Book, an affiliate of the Library of Congress. The Centers for the Book help carry out the mission of the National Center, which is to promote books, reading, libraries, and literacy nationwide. We also promote our state's literary heritage by putting a focus on books and authors with a connection to our states. Every year, as part of the participation in the Library of Congress National Book Festival, we each choose a book with a local connection. This is part of the Great Reads from Great Places initiative. You can learn more at read.gov. Today we are speaking with Great Reads authors from several states. They were invited by the affiliate Centers for the Book from Alabama, Arkansas, Arizona, Colorado, and Missouri, and by the Wyoming State Library to speak about their work and books that open the world to them. We conclude with a panel discussion of how interacting with the natural world, including reading about the natural world, has helped people cope with life during the pandemic.
My name is Rick Bragg, and we're going to talk today about kind of a dog memoir called The Speckled Beauty. I found an old illegitimate Australian shepherd starving to death on a ridgeline up behind our farm. Oh, I guess about 4 years ago. And men in my family are not good at being careful. And everyone told me to leave him alone, that it would bring only grief to bring him down. And I ignored him for 3 days. And he never left. And we think he came here to die. We think he found a place to sit and watch, the livestock and watch the smoke come out of the chimney and watch something that maybe he remembered. But about 3 days was all I could stand. So I went up and fed him half a loaf of raisin bread, which I'm sure is health food for a dog, and carried him back down the mountain. And he has tortured us ever since. He stampedes the livestock, and because he's only got one good eye, he runs them mostly in a circle. So he doesn't know where he's taking them, and they don't know where they've been. And he tortures the cats. And he tortures the UPS man. And then I have to get a car ride to the airport in Atlanta or Birmingham. And he tortures and holds hostage the limo drivers. So he is just as bad as everyone warned us that he would be. But there's a thing about bad dogs that I discovered. A lot of people down here, they don't go to the psychiatrist when they get down. It's just not done. And so we just called it, Larry McMurtry called it living beside a river of melancholy. And I'd been down for some time. I'd been sick and I'd been down. And I discovered that when you're by that river of melancholy, you don't need a good dog. A good dog is great for a good day and a slow day and a sweet day. But you need a bad dog to rip and tear at an empty day. And he has made life better, which I guess every dog on the earth just does naturally. If you grow up in a house where the only two books in the whole place are, the New Testament and the Spring Seed catalog, just about any book is going to hell. But I loved books that took me away. I know what the end of the Pulpwood Road looks like, but McMurtry took me to the American West. James Clavell took me to Asia. Dickens took me. Dickens was a time machine. Dickens should have been a Southern writer, you know. Every book I've ever read that was either a time machine or a rocket ship. And I hope that that my books give people that chance, of the American South. I think that a lot's been written about the Old South. Not a lot has been written that well about the New South, because it's just not as much fun to write about. You know, it's mean, it's nasty, and it's just as mean and nasty as the Old South, but without the romance. So trying to write about the South, and in my case, the working class, blue collar South, has been one of the great challenges and one of the great satisfactions of my life. And the best thing that happens is when somebody calls and says, "You stole my story." You know, I live in Sydney, or I live in Birmingham, England, and your people are my people. And they're not talking about race, they're talking about matters of class. And people who pull in nets in the Pacific Northwest want to fight me over whose people are tougher, you know. So I hope that they see the value in the people, and I hope they love the story.
Hi, I'm Katie Duffield, and I want to thank you first for having me here. I'm honored to have Crossings as the Great Reads selection for Arkansas. I'm the author of more than 40 books for children, and I write both fiction and nonfiction for children. But my true passion, I write for various ages, but my true passion is children's picture books, books for younger readers. And then my latest book, nonfiction, it's my first nonfiction picture book, is Crossings, Extraordinary Structures for Extraordinary Animals. And the gorgeous illustrations in it were done by Mike Oradon. As for Crossings, a few years ago, I read a newspaper article about some underpasses that were being built in Florida for that would protect endangered Florida panthers that were being hit by cars as they crossed highways in Florida. And these underpasses were built to help the panthers move safely from one area to another. And I wanted to know more. I found that really fascinating because I've not ever heard about these wildlife crossings before. So I began my research, and I learned that there were many different types of wildlife crossings that exist around the world. And some of these that I cover in the book are, there are tunnels in New Zealand where these small blue penguins cross under to get back to their nests. There are specifically built bridges that Christmas Island crabs use for their migration times, and ropes that monkeys in Costa Rica use to cross busy roads. And also they're even in Massachusetts, they have these tiny tunnels that go underneath the roads to allow spotted salamanders, animals, creatures as small as spotted salamanders, to travel beneath the road to get from one place to another. And there are many others as well. And it was just such a fascinating topic to me. And once I learned that there were all these different structures, I thought that would be a wonderful topic for a picture book, and Crossings was the result. All right, thank you for the question. This may sound like a bit of a cop-out, I guess, but I can't say that there's any one book that has opened a new world for me, because there are so many infinite worlds to discover in books, and explore every time we turn the pages of any book. There's an opportunity to learn and grow. So um, I feel like every book that I read, it opens a world for me in some way. But being the picture book lover that I am today, I'd like to share some recent picture books that open worlds for me, and that I believe will open worlds for many children as well. Um, One of them being the animal lover in me, and I hope animal lovers and many kids, I'm sure. This is called 14 Monkeys, a Rainforest Rhyme by Melissa Stewart, and the art is by Steve Jenkins. And it's a beautiful, amazing book that that discusses 14 monkeys that live in a particular area. And I think it's something that kids will really enjoy, and it opens up that natural world for kids and for animal lovers to learn more. And also I have a book called Thank You, Amu, and it's by Oge Mora. She did the art and the words. And it opens a world of sharing and caring for others. It's a beautiful fictional story, one of my favorite books right now, that shows, just the way to love and care for others. And another one that's pretty new and not hasn't been out too long is called All of Us by Kathy Erskine and illustrated by Alexandra Boyker. And it's a beautiful book that opens up the important world of belonging and showing how even though we're all different, we're all the same. So it's another book I would really recommend that opens worlds to your heart. And one final one is Alma Fullerton's No More Plastic. She's both the author and the illustrator. And what is really cool about this book, it's a book about activism, opens up the world of activism to kids and adults, and shows how we can make changes that can make a difference in the world. And the one thing that's really cool about this book is Alma did the illustrations all with recycled plastic, plastic pieces. It's about it's about reducing our use of plastics, but it's a really beautiful book to open the world, to show young readers what they can do when they have a cause and have something that they want to work toward to make the world a better place. As far as my books, as far as my books, helping to open worlds. Like I said, I write a lot. Most of the picture books I've written so far have been fictional books. So, and a lot of them are humorous. And I think there's a place in the world for humor, to open worlds for kids that are facing hard times. And then I have been writing more nonfiction books. And like I said, many of those are about animals and nature and that type of thing. So hopefully that will open new worlds to subjects like crossings that people don't know a lot about yet.
Carter Goodrich, and my book is Nobody Hugs a Cactus. I had one of those final dreams of the night a couple of years, well, several years ago now, where it was just an image or a tableau of this cactus sort of leaning out with its mouth open wide. It was a little frightening, actually. But I woke up with that in my mind, and I thought, well, there must be a story in that. And so I proceeded to put one together. And the idea of setting it in the desert made a lot of sense for me, because I think I approach these things more visually than as a writer. And I like the idea of a static stage with this plant basically not moving, but a story has to be told, so it's going to be the world moving around him. And it was kind of fun to stage it. I enjoyed that quite a bit, and having various characters passing by, and the central character, Hank, this cactus, just stays in his pot in his window. And he's an unpleasant little fella in the beginning, well, pretty much throughout until the end. It's pretty much autobiographical, I think, in a lot of ways. The story. It's I've been living and working alone for most of my life, so I've had to watch myself in terms of not becoming this strange guy in town who's yelling at people through his window or anything like that. And the most difficult part of the story was trying to figure out a proper ending. And with the help of my editor at Simon & Schuster, we managed to hammer something out, and I think it worked pretty well. That's my book, basically. The books that I was familiar with in growing up, my father was a painter, and he loved to read a lot of the classics to us, the illustrated classics, N.C. Wyeth and Arthur Rackham and artists like that. And I just loved pouring through them and disappearing into the paintings while he read. So I felt like I traveled the world in that respect. It was really my favorite time of day in the evening when he'd pull these books out, and like Treasure Island and Kidnapped and King Arthur, all these great old stories that were taking place at different times in history and different places. So it was a wonderful experience for me, little kid in Washington, D.C., and traveling in that respect. I think that my books, I'm not so sure that they take people into the world. I think what has surprised me by doing them is the reactions I get from kids and their parents and their grandparents, which I never really expected to affect some of these kids the way they have. And I'm pretty much, I'm not a very positive, happy guy, and my humor is always, or my way of dealing with life has always been more on the dark side. I found that has a place in children's books, but it can't overwhelm them. And to my surprise, it was the things that were kind of sending a positive message and helping a kid navigate the world in that respect that I was hearing back about. And it suddenly became, it was a revelation for me. And I began to I think it's changed me a lot, the reactions of these youngsters and the things they see in it and the things they're learning from them and the humor they find in it. It's been great. I feel like I've improved as a person quite a bit just by having this opportunity to get these stories out to kids. And I'm not like that little cactus anymore. I have changed for the better, and I think that's how they've taken me out into the world. That's pretty much the most I can say about it.
So my name is Jessica Lannon, and I am the author and illustrator of The Fisherman and the Whale, which I actually have here, so I'll hold it up for you. And this is my first book as an author and illustrator, and it is a wordless book. that tells the story of a fisherman who goes out and finds a whale and ends up rescuing that whale. And the story idea came to me because I had been reading a little bit about a story of a rescue, well, several stories actually in the news, and one particular rescue off the coast of California where a fisherman helped with the rescue of the whale and got the opportunity to look into the whale's eye. And he had this moment where he felt really connected to the whale, and he felt empathy with it, that this is a creature with its own feelings, with its own opinions. And then that idea just kind of stewed in the back of my mind. And it was when I was listening to a piece of music that had a lot of cello sounds. It was very whaley sounding. And I just got the idea for this, making a book out of this kind of all at once. And then it was off to the races with figuring out the pacing and making a dummy book and all that kind of stuff. And then figuring out how to tell this story without words. And that was important to me because the whale has its own language. Whales sing, they have a beautiful language. It's very complex. And so do we. And I thought if I wrote English words on there, it would sort of pull the whole story into the realm of human and out of the realm of whale. But if it's visual, if it's pictures, it's not that whales actually read books, but they do look at things. So I thought that maybe it was a little more universal. So that is The Fisherman and the Whale. I was read to by my mother. She read us. I have fond memories of listening to her read us The Hobbit and some longer stories like that. And then I had a collection of picture books that my grandfather would send every Christmas and every birthday. He would send the most beautiful book he could find. They were just beloved to me. I loved to pore over the pictures and imagine myself in this other place. I loved the fairy tales and kind of folk tales like St. George and the Dragon. I would try to copy the dragon pictures with the fire coming out. It was so exciting. And I loved Greek mythology and those kind of wacky stories of all these different characters and having different kinds of drama, and I enjoyed those. What else? I guess the books, they were a way to see new places and travel in time. And they were also a way to travel into someone else's mind, into someone else's experience, and get a sense of what is it like to be this other person, or, kind of step into the mind of the author for a minute. Because every author, I don't know if every book is a little bit autobiographical, but every author puts a little bit of themselves in every one of their books in different ways. Like The Fisherman and the Whale. Sure, it's about nature on the one hand, but I was realizing why this idea of the eye appealed to me so much. And that spread, that the two eyes are facing one another. And let's see if I can find it. Show and tell here. But it's this idea of being seen, of like having someone notice your voice and care about you and kind of see how you're doing. And I guess that idea is one that really appeals to me, is that we have this capacity as human beings through storytelling and through listening to story to see one another and to connect to one another, which is one of the things I love the most about books.
Hi, I'm Bridget Hios. I wrote the book Tremendous. I've written more than 100 books for kids, both fiction and nonfiction. And the idea for Tremendous came when I was with my little daughter walking around the neighborhood, and there was a bumper crop for acorns that year, which I later read happens from time to time. And the neat thing is, it seemed to coincide with a resurgence of wildlife. And we lived in the city, not a very natural area at all, a lot of concrete. But my daughter loved ducks, and this duck family happened to move in at the same time. And we got to watch the babies grow up. And it was just a special time. So I wanted to write something to appreciate the oak trees because I read that ducks do eat acorns, so maybe they were related. I wanted the tree to write the story about itself because, for one thing, that's how I see the world, is that everything has a point of view and a story to tell. And also, I think it adds a little bit of suspense. If I'm writing a story about an acorn that becomes a tree, I know it's going to become a tree, and you know it's going to become a tree, but the acorn doesn't know that. And I think that's true in life, that maybe others have faith in where you're going, but you may not have that faith for yourself. And you just have to take things step by step. And so that's how I read the book. It's illustrated by Mike Ciccatello. And my favorite illustrations of his are when the tree is still an acorn. I just think it's so cute. And so that's Tremendous. I'll tell a book that kind of reopened my world. It was when I already had children, and it was The Dinosaurs of Waterhouse Hawkins. You can see it's well worn. It did lose the cover, but I'll show you the title. This is a book that my son loved. When I was little, I loved fiction books, and I loved the world of Beatrix Potter. And, you know, when I'd see the little animals and their clothes, I think I knew it. I knew that they had a double life. But my son, when he was little, loved nonfiction. And the neat thing about that is I kind of lost sight of the magic of the world, and his love of nonfiction reintroduced me to the magic of the world, but the magic of the real world. And how incredible that we live on a planet that had dinosaurs, and even today that has whales, and on a smaller scale, lightning bugs and flies. We live on such an amazing planet, and reading these nonfiction books opened my eyes to that, so I wasn't walking around with my eyes closed anymore. And that's what got me started writing nonfiction. And so I hope in my own books that I'm sharing the wonder of the world. And just, even if terrible things are happening in your life or you feel really bad, just to be like, well, we have water, like we have air. It's amazing. And so I like to think about that myself, and hopefully my books instill or reinforce that sense of wonder in kids too.
I'm Casey Rizlov, and I'm the author of 6 books so far. And Rowdy Randy's the book that's won this Distinguished Award, and it was my 5th book. And Zachary Poland is the illustrator, and he's also from Wyoming, and he's won this award before, which I thought was kind of neat, about Dee and the Mammoth. So this book, Rowdy Randy, kind of came about with, I love the animals in the West, like your bison, your elk, and all that. And I don't really feel like there's a lot of books out there about that. When I go to parks and stuff, I see the same animals, the same books. And so I thought it would be fun to show some more of the West with something new, and build it in size from small to large, like the horned toad, and then the rattlesnake. Everybody's scared of the rattlesnake. And then the bison, of course, which people think, are furry, and, let's go pet it, but it's not. Anyway, but I also wanted to collide it with another idea of chaos. It's kind of fun to read those books that just build and build and build, where there's just so much going on. And I think in the animal world, as we know, even having pets, that can happen pretty easily. So it builds up to a stampede in my book, which is a pretty big deal. I can't imagine trying to control that, 1,200 pounds of cow running around, and that's just one, and then you have a bunch, and they don't really know what causes a stampede. They don't, it could be lightning that frightens them. It could be a predator that's going after them. And in my book, which could darn happen, is a horsefly. So my book is all about a horsefly causing that kind of trouble. And it's at the ranch is kind of where we put it. Because if you come out west, you see these, people on ranches do see these same animals that you see, in Yellowstone and stuff. They might have bison hanging out. They see the elk and stuff. So it was kind of fun to show what a horsefly would do in a situation, all these animals to choose from to be around. My mother was a very big reader. You could find her on a Saturday just reading books. So for her, she always had stacks of books for us everywhere. And one of them, a couple of the collections that I really liked, I know it sounds kind of funny, but my age group, the Dr. Seuss books. I loved it. I loved it for all the creatures he invented, and I loved it for all the silly words he made up too. I mean, for me, it was just that world, and it's a lot of fun. My favorite of his was the Walk It in a Pocket. I don't know. I could stare at those pictures all day long. And then another set of series of books that my mom got, you could do clubs at the time for these particular groups, Dr. Seuss and then the Disney books. And my favorite one for like the Disney books when it would come in, I just loved when Mickey Mouse was Aladdin in the Aladdin series. So anyways, that's what sticks out to me, what I loved. And it was the adventure, I think, in Disney that, you know, a lot of their stuff is really built around that. For Rowdy Randy, I kind of told you it's about kind of the parks and all those animals that people love to visit, including me. I mean, I live right there, but I can't get enough of seeing these animals. They're, you know, they're majestic, they're dangerous, and man, do they live in a tough world. I can't imagine living in that kind of environment all year round. So it's just an interesting topic for me to start with, just to go out there and watch them. And you can find these animals throughout all the Western states. But again, you have to get off that man-made path, those highways and stuff, or go into the parks to see this stuff. So I think my book kind of opens it up to what those animals look up close. And I think Zachary Poland did a really nice job he did a realistic portraits of these animals. The bison and stuff looks really neat up close because Rowdy Randy, being a horsefly, of course, you know, she thinks she's pretty tough because according to my book, she's the toughest cowgirl in the West. So she would get right on that bison's nose and have her little tough pose, you know, like, I got this. So, and then another part of it besides the animals that this book does, because of course she's a horsefly, is the bugs. And so bugs are a nuisance. So kind of gives you that whole, what does a day in life look like in a horsefly, or any bug for that matter, that is bothering us.
Life in the pandemic, we've all been closed up so much, adults and children, and it's so important in my opinion, to get outside, to be able to walk and just enjoy, maybe even hike. And I think crossings, although we can't hike where all the wildlife crossings are, we can still get outside and view nature and just, you know, get that breath of fresh air. With crossings, I've had quite a bit of interaction on my website. I have several YouTube videos on there of some actual wildlife crossings in the world, one in Banff in Canada and different places. And I think people have really enjoyed reading the book and then going on the website and viewing some of those videos that show the actual animals using the crossings. It's pretty fascinating because you might be surprised, you know, by all the things that you see, the different size and animals and the variety of animals and that sort of thing. So, you know, hopefully that is something that getting out in the natural world will help kids and adults cope with the pandemic.
That's a great question about the natural world and how it guides us through times that are tough. I don't live near the ocean. My book's about the ocean, but I live in Colorado and we've got incredible access. I live in Boulder, Colorado, and just there are trails everywhere and we have wonderful access to nature here. And during the pandemic, it was particularly fortunate because when we couldn't go do normal activities or social activities, we at least had this outlet, like to be able to go hiking and to connect to nature and see, you know, trees and animals and just be outside. And it's made me aware of what a privilege that is and how not everyone has access to that. And that my hope is that having grown up in that environment and kind of feeling it in my bones, I can create images that will at least give readers, give children the chance to see places that maybe they can't travel to and to feel that sense of beauty and appreciation for nature that we can take for granted out here in the West sometimes. Anybody else?
Well, for me, reading about the natural world is comforting in a crisis, and it's twofold. For one thing, if a scientist is researching a problem, to me, that shows they care about it. So let's say a loved one has a disease and it's not very well researched, even though it's common. Well, that tells me, why don't people care about this? Why aren't they researching it? But if I see that they are researching it, I say, yeah, they get it, they care, and they're researching it. And then the second part of it is that once they research it and understand it, that's the first step to tackling it and, you know, treating it. Like in the case of the virus, once we know where it's coming from, it's like a villain in a story. Now you've got them. Once you know what their motivation is, it's like, oh, I get it. I can talk them out of this, you know? And so with the virus, once they understood it, they could give us advice and create a vaccine. So I love reading scientific articles about crises and problems, because it shows that level of caring. And then it's also that first step to doing something about it.
My thoughts about it too were just like yours, Bridget, on the that it's healing both ways, and the research part of it, because life outdoors is healing, I think, in itself. And you know, it's neat to watch that ladybug and watch the seasons change, those leaves and stuff. So I feel like there's always new knowledge to be found, and the best way to do is just to step outdoors. And so then that's when you can do, you're kind of figuring out what's getting your curiosity for the day. And then you can go back to a book and go research it, like you were talking about, or go, you know, find some more information on that. And whether you go to the library or look online, and then, or the other way, you open up a great book about the outdoors, it's going to probably send you out there to go check it out. And it's a very healing process, I think, both ways, the natural world.
Bridget, you made a point about how extraordinary this planet is, and the unbelievable range of life, plants and animals, insects. And this has been occurring. I've been thinking about that a lot, especially since all the business with the traveling, you know, this idea to travel to Mars, and all the excitement over that. And, you know, maybe we can start over on this dead, poisonous planet. And it's made me see this planet so much more now when I go out. It's an extraordinary place. Just, you can just be in a local neighborhood and take 1 square foot of somebody's lawn, the amount of life in that square foot, the impossible number of species of bugs and plants is just mind-blowing. And it is an extraordinarily beautiful, unusual, unique place. So I think that there is a lot of healing in that, but there's also a lot, and for me, I mean, when you look at what's happening right now, it's alarming and it's sad. And I'm glad that we're finally paying attention to it, but I wonder, you know, if we've waited a little too long. This unbelievable jewel of the planet is in peril right now. Not to be a downer or anything. I know this is supposed to be, you know, that, but I think just people do need to pay a little bit more attention to where we live. It's mind-boggling. Even in my neighborhood here in LA, just going out for a walk is I feel like I'm seeing everything now. I'm really seeing everything, and it's quite something. I hope more people are experiencing that with all that we're going through right now.
We're in a time where, let's face it, crowds will kill you. Taking a walk through the grocery store can be dangerous. And especially in my state where people have fought against the science of this disease. So I found that the best place in the world to be is under a tree. I have worked in the pasture more than I have since I was 16. And I find myself running a saw and burning brush piles and clearing up damage. We had tornadoes. We're about to have one outside now, if y'all are listening good. And that notion of just, I spent probably 15 minutes the other day watching a rabbit, you know, just sitting there trying not to move, watching a rabbit. Then it occurred to me it wasn't the same damn rabbit. But just standing at the edge of the pond, counting minutes. I stopped the other day, and I'm a mean old curmudgeon-y man. And I stopped the other day on that skinny blacktop road in Northeast Alabama to get a turtle out of the middle of the road. And I remember at the last minute, you always have to ask the turtle which direction it wanted to go. So I had to remember to make sure I didn't just defeat the whole purpose of putting the turtle so that it just have to do the whole journey over again. And I think being out in that natural world has been not a cure, but a balm for all this. And reading about it is the next best thing. I read about 50 pages of Call of the Wild by Jack London, and I was 14 years old again. I just think it's a wonderful, wonderful ball.
I noticed that I lost both my parents a few years ago, and toward the end of their lives, I'd spend time with them, and they had become obsessed with trees. And in the end, it's really all they cared about or talked about. When I took my father out for lunch and wheeled him out of the hospital, and he was just watching these huge trees blowing around in the wind. And it was interesting. It was unexpected. I didn't quite understand it, but they both in their own way had become just really taken with trees all of a sudden. And I find now suddenly that I'm beginning to understand it, oddly, that I pay more and more attention to them. And there is a great comfort that they exude. They're the most patient creatures you can imagine, and they've seen, the older ones have seen so much swirling around them, all the craziness of our species, and there's something fascinating about them. To me, I'm happiest now when I'm just sitting somewhere where I have a good view of a tree or several. And I think I could do that all day now. So, yeah, this has been a difficult few years for everybody. Not just the COVID, but I think everything that came before it. And it's hard to find a way back. A lot of my friends are having a lot of trouble, and maybe that's the best route back right now. At least I think it is for me. Spending more time out. I don't know that I don't see where books really come into it, but actually it's one of those things that's easy enough to do. And pretty worthwhile, I think, at this point. I feel like I've kind of lost faith right now in everything else. My own species, I think. This has just been a big wildering time, but I keep taking this off point, so I'll stop talking. Any of you can take the mic.
Well, I was just going to say another point, I think, about nature that everybody's kind of touched too, is that curiosity piece. Even if you are just looking at a tree, and that you get that childlike self about yourself, because you start wondering about things. And that was one of my favorite parts of Rowdy Randy, of all my books that I've done, is then I had to dive into, okay, well, if I'm going to write about a horsefly, I better know more about a horsefly than it just bites. So I think the one thing when you are outdoors is you get childlike. You got 100 questions. You know, I have a 12-year-old right now. I'm getting a lot of questions nonstop. So my 9-year-old too, but right now I feel like my 12-year-old's kind of doing a little more. But you know, it's like the horsefly. Did any of you guys know that only the female is the one that bites? She's got to get that blood, she's got to get that protein for her eggs. So I just think part of
That is not at all surprising.
Right. Oh, I make him stop and think about it for a minute though. I'm like, okay, what do you think? I like to throw it back at him. But I think, I don't know, nature brings you back to that slowness that Carter's talking about, that childlike curiosity, and then you can just take it from there, you know, and find that. And that's, for me, that was the best part of writing Rowdy Randy. And when I go visit schools and stuff, I don't just read the book. You want to go into some of that background. Hey, did you know that those cowboys really can stop that 1,200-pound cow? I mean, look at your teacher try to wrangle you 30 kids in line. I go, think about those cowboys wrangling that. So I don't know, I think it's kind of fun to learn about that. So I find myself act very childlike when I'm doing these children's books.
If you do a dog book, and I think every writer on earth is eventually going to do a dog book, except those who know soul, and I guess they would be cat people. But if you do a dog book, you have to read a lot into the dog. You know, because dogs don't give very good quotes. So you have to read a lot into why the dog does what the dog does. And the bad thing about that, may be a good thing considering what we're talking about taking a refuge somehow in nature, is now whenever I see any animal of any kind, I try to interpret what it's thinking.